Hey guys, welcome to a video. I'm going to be predicting my first prediction for the 2020 election between Donald Trump and the Republicans and Joe Biden and the Democrats. The first thing I'm going to do is just kind of go through and mark all the states that I believe are safe, entirely safe, one direction or the other. And then I'll start adding on more from leans to likely. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is Alaska as a safe Republican choice and Hawaii as a safe Democratic choice. Out west, we have a lot of states that we know where they're going to vote. And I'm just going to go ahead and come through and kind of mark all the states that we already know here early. And then I will go through and mark the ones that require a little more discussion. Obviously, I believe that this is going to be an extremely close race. I have no doubt about that. And I also think that this race could be decided in a lot of states that people don't really consider to be states that are battlegrounds, but we will get to that in just a moment. So here's our electoral map the way I have it right now. I'm going to go ahead and leave it like this, and we're going to go ahead and add our leans and likely. And we'll start off in Nevada out here in the West. Nevada is a state that is very favorable for the Democratic Party given the demographics. I believe that this is most likely going to go to the Democratic Party for that reason. So I am going to put it as a likely towards the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, with Utah, I'm going to put it as a likely towards the Republican Party. This is quickly becoming a state that could change in the next few years, but I do think that as of right now, we are looking at Utah will vote for Donald Trump despite Mitt Romney and his handling of the impeachment trial. New Mexico is going to be a strong Democrat state. It is the strongest Democratic state in this Southwest, in my opinion, and it's pretty much a lock for the Democratic Party, unlike the state of Colorado, which isn't necessarily a lock for the Democratic Party, but I'm going to put it as a likely towards the Democratic Party. Obviously, John Hickenlooper ran his presidential candidacy for a couple months, and perhaps that'll rise up voter turnout amongst Democrats in the state. But the assumption would be that Joe Biden is able to carry the more progressive, left leaning state of Colorado. And Arizona, I'm going to go ahead and skip for right now because I do think that Arizona is as close to a true battleground as you can get. So moving over, the same applies for Nebraska's second district, by the way. They are also a battleground area. Oklahoma and Texas are similar stories in that I'm going to have them as likely towards the Republican Party, both because of the fact that the assumption this year will be that Donald Trump will be able to carry both of these states, but especially with the state of Oklahoma, Bernie Sanders did very well in the Democratic primary there, and Beto O'Rourke not 2 years ago had to go to a runoff with Ted Cruz and nearly beat him in a Senate race in Texas. So do look for these states to become more of battleground states in the years to come. But I do believe that for this election, they are likely to go towards Donald Trump and the Republicans. Meanwhile, now we're going to move into this southeast here, the southeast. Florida seems to be a close election every single year, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that one. Georgia, I am going to put as a lean towards the Republican Party, and I think that a lot of people need to be more cognizant of Georgia and Atlanta specifically. It is a rapidly growing city that is quickly becoming demographically very liberal, and that only serves to help the Democrats in a massive electoral state like Georgia. But I do think that right now in this election, unless Joe Biden picks someone like a Stacey Abrams who would spike Georgia Democratic voter turnout, I think that the Republicans will be able to win and pick up that state. North Carolina, is always a battleground state. We're going to go ahead and leave that blank. Virginia, I'm going to put as a likely towards the Democrats. It is likely to go to the Democratic Party. It typically goes to the Democratic Party. The reason that I'm not putting it as a lock is because of the corruption and the scandals that have really admired the entire time that these Democrats in Virginia have been in office. They have been unable to kind of get massive growth in the party, in the state, because of the fact that there's a lot of things that are going on that people don't necessarily agree with amongst from the Democrats above. And so I do see this going Democrat, but do keep an eye on Virginia and expect it to be an interesting race given what's going on there. Now moving up into this Rust Belt amount of voters, I'm going to put New York obviously as a lock for the Democrats. And I'll go ahead and start up in the state of Maine. I do predict that Maine's second district is going to be a slight lean towards the Republican Party. I think that there is enough of a reason to think that the state will hold on to and give Donald Trump at least one electoral vote. I do think that the statewide and District 1 will go to Joe Biden, but expect Maine 2 to be a hotly contested race that may end up giving Donald Trump that extra electoral vote. Now, moving down to New Hampshire. New Hampshire is an extremely, extremely close state every year. I am going to put this as a lean towards the Republicans. Donald Trump barely failed to pick up the state in 2016, but it was extremely close. And given the fact that Hillary Clinton has quite a bit of ties up in the Northeast, whereas Joe Biden does not, Joe Biden did very poorly as well in the New Hampshire primary. And so I could see this definitely going to the Republican Party and the Republican Party breaking into that block of blue up in the Northeast. Now, as we move into the Rust Belt, as I was saying earlier, the blue collar area, I'm going to have Iowa as a likely towards the Republicans, as well as Ohio. Both of these states typically go Republican, and the state of Ohio typically decides the election. And so keep an eye on Ohio, whether Trump's approval ratings go down or whether he can just continue to stay steady in this state, because if he wins the state of Ohio, that's a massive 18 electoral college prize. And typically that state does decide who ends up winning the presidency. Now, of the states we have left, I think that the ones that we can most likely assign are Minnesota as likely towards the Democrats and Wisconsin as a lean towards the Republicans. Given the polling in Minnesota, this shouldn't be of any surprise to anyone. It's the most liberal state in the Midwest, and it really, second to Illinois, of course, it's the most liberal that they have out there. And I think that that will definitely go in Joe Biden's favor with Amy Klobuchar providing that endorsement. And Wisconsin, I have a slight lean towards the Republicans. It's obviously a red state, and I think that it will stay that way in 2020. I don't think that Joe Biden has enough of a reach to make a case with those voters in Wisconsin. Now moving to the middle of the country again and covering Nebraska. For Nebraska's second district, they have ranked choice voting, which could definitely change the outcome and makes it a natural toss-up. I'm going to put it the second district as a slight lean towards Joe Biden and the Democrats, just given polling and given the ranked choice voting. I think that Joe Biden will get a lot more benefit from ranked choice voting than that of Donald Trump. Now we've got basically the 5 states that are going to decide the election. That is Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Florida, 229 to 218. All right. And the first state I'm going to go with is the state that I think Donald Trump has the strongest appeal to, and that is the state of Pennsylvania. He's done a decent job protecting blue-collar jobs and fracking and things of that nature, which Pennsylvania is big on blue-collar. They're big on coal. And I think that that is going to be the place where Donald Trump has the best chance to play of out of that or Minnesota. I think that Donald Trump has the best case to the Pennsylvania voters, and I do think that he'll end up slightly leading and winning the state in the end. However, on the under end of the coin, the state of Michigan, I have to believe will go to Joe Biden and the Democrats, given how much the coronavirus outbreak has been put on Donald Trump's shoulders and how much it has affected the African American community, especially in and around that area of Detroit. I think that Donald Trump will not be able to win Michigan once again. And now we look at the final three states here. Who's going to win the election? Who's going to win the election? Well, first and foremost, I have Joe Biden winning here out in Arizona. I think that if Joe Biden's able to pick up Colorado and pick up Nevada like he should, then I think that there's definitely a case to be made for him to win this state of Arizona. Kyrsten Sinema, senator, won her election back in 2018, which flipped a seat in Congress, which is obviously very important. And I think that it is a sign of what may be to come. Finally, we get to two of the most interesting states in North Carolina and Florida, respectively. I think that the election in and of itself could come down to either one of these states. And I think that the state that is most likely out of these two is North Carolina to go to Trump. And the reason that I'm willing to give that one to Trump is because, well, there's a couple reasons. First of all, he won this state back in 2016, as well as the Republican National Convention will be held in Charlotte, the main city, Charlotte, North Carolina, this year, which will no doubt rise voter turnout amongst the Republican Party. And so that leaves us with the great state of Florida, the only state undecided. Who is going to win the state of Florida is going to win the election. And I don't necessarily know if it's going to end up being a toss-up in the state of Florida, because right now it's polling very strong towards Joe Biden, but it always seems like it's polling towards Democrats very well, and the Democratic voters just do not turn out in the state of Florida. So I'm going to give this as a slight lean towards the Republican Party, simply given the fact that we don't know what kind of voter turnout we're going to have in Florida. Florida typically is one of those places you just can't predict how it's going to go. And so I would give that as a slight lean towards the Republicans, given where they voted in 2016 and how they continue to trend. But look out for Joe Biden in that state as well. He could definitely make a splash in the state of Florida or even in the state of North Carolina. North Carolina has a major Senate race this year between Thom Tillis, Republican incumbent, and Cal Cunningham, his Democratic challenger. And I think that that will rise Democratic voting in the state of North Carolina. So perhaps North Carolina swings towards Joe Biden, and in that case, we have a very close election decided between basically 4 electoral votes. And so right now, the way I've predicted the map, I have 282 for Donald Trump and 256 for Joe Biden. But again, if Joe Biden picks a Stacey Abrams from Georgia, maybe he'll compete for these 16. Maybe Joe Biden can win New Hampshire, and that's a big 4 up there. Maybe Joe Biden can actually win the state of Florida and get voters to turn out. Maybe he can win the state of North Carolina simply by endorsing the Democratic candidate for Senate there and getting people out to vote. So clearly there is a lot to remember and a lot to keep in mind as we are still about 6 months away, over 6 months actually away from the election. A lot of things are going to change. And every time that I come out with a new video, I'll just go ahead and start with this map right here, a map that only gives us our battleground states. And basically, I'm going to flip New Hampshire to a battleground, but basically this will give us our battleground states. And I will keep just updating you guys with where I stand based on the polls. So make sure you're on the lookout for another video. Who do you think is going to win the election? Am I crazy for saying that Donald Trump's going to get reelected? Where is Joe Biden going to win that I don't have him winning? Put all that stuff in the comments. Show a video to a friend. Stay educated. Know what's going on. This is a major election, people. No matter what your political views are, this is a watershed election this year. So make sure that you get out there and vote and look for another video. Thanks.